every time I see this movie, I have an itching. I don't know if you agree. I really do want to read one of Holly Martin's books.
I kind of do too.
I do too.
Yeah.
After they insult him the entire time in his books, and and he regards himself as a pulp writer.
Yeah, it's nice to see someone kind of digging into what writers always have to deal with, which is I like the movie better, or I like it wasn't as good at the end. I particularly like when Stephen King makes fun of himself in his works, and he's like, I didn't care much for the ending.
I absolutely agree. So today we're going to talk about the 1949 Carol Reed masterpiece, The Third Man. This is his first time seeing it, so we're going to understand.
First man?
Yeah.
Second man?
Second man. Where's third?
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I am Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continued support the show. You can follow the show on Twitter and on Instagram. We do have a Patreon. Check that out for some great deals that tell some films that we would critique. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out the webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about the 1949 murder mystery. It is The Third Man.
Yeah, so pulp writer Holly Martins has arrived in the complicated city of Vienna in search of a job offered by his friend Harry Lime. Martins soon learns that his friend is dead, and when he searches for information, he finds inconsistencies in the stories, leading him down a path of discovery about what really happened to Harry.
Okay, so this is a British film. It's actually, I think in 2000, the British critiqued it as the best British film of all time. If you go to Vienna and ask about this movie, because it's filmed in Vienna, a lot of people from Vienna won't really know what you're talking about. It's not really discussed or notarized. There is a tour, there is a little cafe that
There's a cafe, yeah.
Yeah, about this movie. You can have a little take a tour, but overall, Vienna people just kind of really ignore this movie. And so if you go to Vienna thinking, oh, this is, about The Third Man, they're kind of like, nah.
As someone who lived in Fargo for 3 years, I understand that.
Yeah,
because you get people that are always in there going, "You guys don't sound like I thought you would."
Right. Yeah. I know you have a copy.
I did.
Yeah.
I did get a copy of The Third Man. This is the Studio Canal Collection. The release of it, the director's cut, if you will. One thing I want to point out is the insane pricing you can get if you have the Criterion Blu-ray.
Okay. Well.
Holy crap! Because it was released on Blu-ray and then they lost the rights like a few months later. So they only made a limited number. You can buy those things online for like $700 now.
Okay,
I missed out on my chance.
Okay,
but
really go see it in theater for the third time.
Yeah, go see it in the theater instead.
So there's different variations. I think in Britain, if you can find it, at the beginning of the movie, the narration is Joseph Cotton's character talking about his experience. I think if your copy just has an overall, just the narrator.
Yes, it's Carol Reed narrating based on Trevor Howard's character, Major Calloway's dialogue from the book.
Yeah.
So you can also tell based on the runtime. If your film runs 93 minutes, it's the U.S. theatrical version. If it runs 105 minutes, you're watching the director's cut or the U.K. version, if you will. So check it out that way.
Okay. And the other interesting is Anton Karkaris playing a zither. If you didn't know what a zither is, it's pretty much a guitar without the neck, and it has 24 strings. But in the beginning of the movie, they just showed a camera on top of it as the guy Anton's playing it. It's one of the most iconic, recognizable music things, but you think it doesn't really match the story very much, but the music is almost like, I would say, it's recreational, skipping down the street kind of music. It's just endless activity.
I want to point out a quote here from the terrific
Roger
Ebert. Has there ever been a film where the music more perfectly suited the action than Carol Reed's The Third Man?
Right.
And now I say that because I have a different opinion. This is the only thing about the film that I downright did not like. I do not care for the music. I understand the necessity of the music because, as Graham Greene pointed out, the author of the novella and the screenplay, is that he was writing a comedy thriller. He was writing a lighthearted, kind of sillier, thrilling piece of film, and the music kind of does aid in telling you that.
Yeah.
That being said, I think you could have gone with a better comedy thriller score. I just found that score to be excised from an old SpongeBob episode.
Oh my gosh, you're going to poo-poo on the music.
It's the only thing I didn't like in the film, and maybe on a rewatch, I'll love it. I did not care for it this first time, though. And it's more because I think I woke up with a headache that morning, too, so it didn't help.
That's not going to help either, because it's like mindless skipping. It got on the radio, got a lot of play. Actually, you can buy a single for the song. There used to be a radio show called The Third Man, and I think Orson Welles would come in, but you can follow the stories, and there's a prequel of this story The Adventures of Harry Lime, which is events that happened before the Third Man events.
Was that the television series?
The radio.
Okay, because there was the television series, too, that ran for like 77 episodes that was based on Harry Lime himself. So I'm a little confused as to if that somehow fits in at all or if it's just a completely separate entity.
I think it probably is based from the radio show or not.
Oh, okay.
I didn't do my research about that. I just remember I can retain it that there was a radio show with Harry Lime. There's also the radio show of the Third Man that carries on afterwards.
Okay, so that's probably all connected.
And you can get the music on the radio a lot as well. When you talk about this movie, we have to talk about it right away. It's called Dutch Angles, and this movie is the epitome of Dutch angles.
So if I guess you could say that the third man walked so Battlefield Earth could run right into the ground.
Yes.
Because I like the Dutch angle usage in the film. It's very unnerving. It's very disturbing. And you're constantly in a state of flux. This is that good convolution that we have. Whereas I've talked about other films where I don't like the convoluted storyline. Yeah. There's like a level of convolution where it's still accessible. It reaches the edge of it. Yeah. And the way the Dutch angles get that is that you always kind of feel like you're in a little bit of a dream, that you're in an unrealistic city because it's divided into like 5 sections and everyone's fighting over places there. It's kind of like the whole film exists in this weird vacuum that doesn't make sense unless you're in the film. And I think the Dutch angles kind of help with that, whereas you got Battlefield Earth when they're overdone and then everyone hates them now. So.
But you got Vienna after the war, which is very much a mess. It's the aftershock of war, and everybody's playing like this. They're already exhausted dealing with things after the war. Even the war has ended, they're still... Even then we're doing the play, and it's supposed to be a comedy, everybody is still kind of exhausted. They don't throw flowers, they throw tea. It's a little of the details in the movie that I enjoy.
If you watch any like interview with people who are in war-torn countries, if you even look at some of the conversation going on in Ukraine right now, when they ask the people that are there like what's happening, so many of them have one phrase for it, and it is "I'm confused." And I think that's what Vienna is in this film. Yeah. It is a city that is confused about its identity following the war, and that's why you have like factions of police officers, and then you have like an inner faction that actually like patrols, across
they show the narration,
borders.
right?
Yeah, it's an incredible, again, confusing thing, but that puts you in the mindset of the people living there. They don't even really know what country they're part of, or where they stand, or who they're supposed to trust, and that goes even into the sewers.
Yeah. Peter Bogdanovich interviewed Orson Welles later in life in the 70s talking about this film, and he always cited this, that he liked doing this movie because when he did a movie a play called Mr. Wu, and in the play, all the actors will always talk about Mr. Wu. Well, Mr. Do this, and then that. And then at the end of the Act 2, just beyond the bridge as a backlit, so it's a silhouette, and everybody turns around and go, oh my God, it's Mr. Wu, after they've been talking about it, and he's been eavesdropping, and the curtain drops, and then all the audience are like, did you see Mr. Wu? Isn't that fantastic acting? And that's what Orson Welles said about this man, is he didn't have to do very much, but all the other actors are lifting him, and they're building up a rapport. I would say it's very much like The Dark Knight, even though the Joker's not in every scene, but everybody's talking about the Joker more or less throughout the whole movie. Much like Harry Lime.
I kept thinking of Rebecca. Alfred Hitchcock's film where we never actually meet Rebecca, but we know everything about her because of how people always talk about her. Now, this is a film where, again, he gets about 5 minutes of screen time. He was on set for like 1 or 2 weeks. I do wish one thing, and I know it's a tough thing for me to ask of you guys, if you're going to make a film, if you're going to release it on Blu-ray, avoid putting Orson Welles on the cover. I know that everyone knows he's in the movie. I knew he was in the movie, and I remember seeing that one shot years ago of the zoom in on him and go, Harry. So I knew he was playing Harry, and then I knew that Harry was going to be alive. And it's like, I know that it's tough because the movie is decades old. Yeah. But try to avoid it if you're making a Blu-ray for the film. That's one thing, like, it's a marketing issue.
When he passed away, it's that one shot they did, too.
Yeah, and I wish, I almost wish that Orson Welles was just not credited in the film at all, either. Like, don't even have him listed in the credits. And just have, when he appears, it's a big deal then, especially following, his many, many storied career at that point.
I agree. If you want to do it like my film instructor did in college. He just had the poster of Joseph Cotton in front of the Ferris wheel.
Yes.
Flagging him down.
Yeah, like there's great poster work available, and I just think if you look at your VHS, which I've seen, it's just a picture of Orson Welles, and it's like, well, he's going to be in this movie, isn't he?
He's going to be in this movie. Because they talk about Harry Lime passed away.
Yeah.
And then you always wonder, it's the charismatic Harry Lime, even though he's a repulsive human being.
Yes.
And that's tough to do. You can be charismatic, and he's still, when you finally see him, he's still charismatic. But you understand, he's one of the most repulsive things ever. So, because he opens the Ferris wheel and said, "Would you ever feel pity if one of those ants had stopped living?"
Yeah,
really,
the
honestly.
dot stops moving. You know,
The dot
that's
stop
a good
moving.
line.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it too because for about a half hour, I thought, maybe Orson Welles is in this movie in flashbacks. Maybe maybe we're gonna revisit him, kind of like John Wayne in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, where it's like maybe he's going to exist in flashbacks only, and that's why he is. But about halfway through or half hour into the movie, I realized there's not going to be any flashbacks. So I'm like, so he's alive. And it's like, I know it's a small thing. I just wish, like, I think I would have not have believed that. I think I would have been shocked when that happened in the movie if it wasn't sold on every single version. I understand it's an issue, but it's my issue.
So you have a black and white noir. I think it's wonderful. I like the. I don't know. The dialogue is my favorite part of this. I think the dialogue is very smooth. Everything is not. It doesn't have wasted lines throughout the whole movie. Especially when you have, like, the person, you want a cigarette? Well, keep the pack. It's like, well, you know how hard those would come by around here? Right. So you understand that he's well off. Yeah.
I think particularly my favorite interaction of characters would be Holly Martin's and Trevor Howard's Major Calloway. I really liked their interactions because there was, like, a strained respect. Like a get out of here, but also I can maybe use you.
It's that push and pull that's contrast. Like, you're born to be murdered, boy. But hang around and you might be the thread that can solve this mystery.
Mm-hmm. And the most surprising character interactions that I really found like to be exemplary, even though the character's not in a lot, is again between Cotton's, Holly Martin's, and I didn't get the character name, but Bernard Lee as kind of the other cop that's like a fan of his writing. And he's
Calloway's sidekick. Muscle, right.
The funny thing about this, if you guys don't know, is this has 2 M's from future James Bond films. It's got Bernard Lee and it's got Robert Brown, both played M in the James Bond franchise. Hey. You also have 2 people who worked on the crew that ended up being directors of future James Bond films, John Glenn and Guy Hamilton. So while the James Bond franchise would have existed without this film, there's a lot of people that got their start that continued to keep that ball rolling. So
right. The ending is actually filmed in the sewer system. Mm-hmm. Nobody was actually enjoying doing that the entire time. Orson Welles said it was actually almost a repulsive thing you have to do.
He doesn't remember doing a safe place then.
Yeah, I think Bernard Lee doesn't say it goes into the Danube. Doesn't that sweet smell? Because there's no aroma. But I think it's functioning. Everybody talks about the ending of Joseph Cotton with Harry Lime. You have the one gunshot, and you can fill in the blanks, the perception that he actually committed the murder, or did Harry Lime commit suicide. It's one of those anonymous things that we don't really know about. The third person we haven't talked about is Alida Valli.
Yeah, so Anna Schmidt, Valley.
Anna Schmidt, yes.
I liked her in the film. I was less interested in the romantic entanglement than I was in the police entanglement. I'm not slighting that part of it, but I just felt like, I was like, Harry, Holly, get going. We want to figure out what's going on with Harry. You kept getting sidetracked with her, and I understand why, because it's Valley, but...
Yeah. That's the interesting component, because it is love story interrupted, or not wanting to be, because he wants to have a relationship with her, and she doesn't really give a crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, he's kind of... The part of it is that, from his perspective now, Harry's dead. Yeah. And so, like... I don't want to say, like, she's single now, but at the same time, he's kind of like hinging his bets on, this is my friend, this is his love, what do? I can't really get involved, but at the same time, Harry's dead, she needs someone, and I'm someone. I like that kind of interplay there, especially knowing when we eventually find out that Harry is still alive. There's a sense of betrayal, so what he does with Valley made me more interested in what he does with Harry, because that part of it, like the betrayal of you faking your own death to bring your friend here for a job, and you kind of feel like he's going to get betrayed by his own friend. Yeah. And it's like, go for the girl.
And she even mistakenly calls him Harry once.
Several times, yeah.
Several times she calls him Harry instead of Holly. And they mistaken, because that feels like that dialogue, again, if you watch it, it feels so organic, even though it's very a tight script. I'm Calloway, not Callahan.
Well,
yeah.
And the way that when she calls him Harry, again, we're getting elements then of Harry as a character because of why she calls Harry, for the things that Harry and Holly have in common. You know what I mean? Like, right. What brings that out of her then adds more to Harry's character. So even though he only has 5 minutes of screen time in an entire movie that's kind of about him, you feel like you know the character beginning to end.
Especially a cat that only likes him.
That's the best giveaway ever. That may be one of the best setups and payoffs of any movie I've ever seen. And I'm not just saying that as a cat guy, because when they introduce him, they're like, oh, he only liked Harry. It's a throwaway line.
Because he plays, because he's playing with the cat and he's just ignoring him. Yeah.
But for one thing, if you want to play with a cat, don't slap him in the face with the toy. It just doesn't work like that. But I like that she's like, he only likes Harry because it feels like a throwaway line. And if it hadn't been paid off, it would have been one of those things where you say, every line has purpose. I'd be like, what about that friggin' cat line? The cat line does have purpose when it comes back to haunt us. When that cat moves down, I'm like, wait, he only likes Harry. Wait, he's going somewhere. Wait, it's great as a viewer to have that setup and payoff, because I'm sitting there with my Pop-Tarts just going like, what is happening, man? It's great. Like, that part was, again, a great setup and payoff. That's not talked about in this movie at all.
No. The other thing I like, because another pet, is the dog. Because you see he goes to Dr. Winkle, but you see the dog that the other friend already had. But that's the same dog, and then you can see Holly connect the dots. Wait, that's your dog? Yes. Interesting. And I like that. Winkle. My name is Winkle.
Yeah, there's a lot of name confusion in this film.
Get to the point, yes. I love the cast of characters. The characters are very fleshed out, very individual, very driven, but you feel natural. They're all it's almost like playing cards. Everybody's not really showing all their hands at the same time, except for Holly. He's out there. He's an extrovert.
Yeah, because, I mean, why would you hide anything? You have nothing to hide. The guy died. It was a traffic accident. There's nothing to hide. Like, I'm just me at that point. And it's funny because as a pulp novelist, I didn't read any of Holly's works, but he probably had characters that were smart enough not to give it all away. And yet he's kind of out there just chatting it up with different people and using any card he can. That's another sign of a novelist. He takes any free ride he can get. You want to stay in town and do a talk? Sure, I don't speak the language. Give me let me stay in your place for a couple days.
There's certain elements of comedy in this that I enjoy. He does get bit by a parrot. And then the police goes, what happened? I got bit by a parrot. Oh, really? I don't believe your story. Or the balloon guy, when they're doing their stakeout, he wants to sell them the balloons. And there's a little sense of awkwardness, but there's peppered right amount of comedy to make it kind of overall an emotional perspective that you enjoy.
Yeah, and you get Joseph Cotten, who's worked with Orson Welles quite a bit. At least most of the films with Joseph Cotten are films that also have Orson Welles, at least that I've seen. So it was nice to see Cotten get kind of the spotlight for the film. Even if he doesn't get it on the friggin' poster, he gets it in the film. And it's kind of cool to see him lead the film instead of usually in a lot of the other interactions I've seen, it's Orson Welles kind of commanding the screen and Cotten is a supporting player. So it's kind of cool to see that.
I did like the one scene together in the Ferris wheel when he opens the door and then Holly finally knows himself, I should be pretty easy to get rid of. And then Holly Hiram says, nobody probably looked for a bullet from that ground.
Exactly, yeah.
And then he starts holding on to the Ferris wheel.
Well, we get the sense that we know Harry until we meet Harry, and then everything about him is a lie. And in that whole interaction, we change from wanting to find out what happened to Harry to thinking maybe Harry should have stayed dead. And that's kind of the funny thing about the movie is it begins and ends with the funeral of the same character.
I loved it. It just feels very murky at the end, and even though it's black and white, but then you have the lighting and everything in the tunnels, and then you have this very chasing, and you don't know the echoes or where it's everybody, so you get the very much the anxiety that Harry Lime is getting throughout the film. But at the end, you get the exterior shots of locations, but the talking and the dialogues and the police and everything. I love the movie. I recommend seeing it in a theater. I've seen it many times in the theater. I still enjoy it far more in the theater than I do popping into the screen.
What I think about it is so fascinating is that it created a lot of things that we look at that we've kind of parodied to the sense of nothingness. You kind of have to go into it and remember this is what it's kind of one of the standouts that created a lot of these ideas. Dutch angles now are criticized because they're overused in every single movie. In this film, it was kind of where they were created, although at the time they thought he was overdoing it because he was sent a level as a gift after the film came out.
William Wyler, wasn't William Wyler?
Put it on the camera so you know. And then he ended up winning Black and White Best Cinematography at the Academy Awards, so take that, William. But
here's a level that you can level your camera.
So even though I don't love the music, maybe I will next time, I like a lot of the other elements in the film.
A lot of arguments, a lot of critiques, and people don't really regard this as a noir. I kind of do. There's a lot of elements that this doesn't really feel like a noir. I definitely put this in the category of a noir. There's enough for me the condemned spirit. And nobody has a really enjoyable ending to this. I think if you remember, Carol Reed had a fight for an unhappy ending to this with Selznick. But
there was like 3 endings talked about, and I'm confused about what they all were because they sounded kind of like the same ending, just like with a different capper. Yeah. But
that's what everybody, we do multiple takes. If I do a multiple takes of a movie, we're gonna have different things. I'm not gonna have multiple takes of the same thing. I'm not gonna do Kubrick. Right. So if you want different endings, but it's almost the same thing, which is the greatest F you to a dude a woman can ever do. This is as plain and everything, just to have one chance, and I'm not gonna have it.
See, and you know that I criticize ambiguity. I find ambiguity in most films to be not great.
You can.
I really like the ambiguity of Harry's shot, or maybe not Harry's shot, if you will. Like what happens in that sewer. I like that ambiguity. Yeah. I also like the ambiguity of the relationship at the end. Because I don't think that means that the story isn't giving us an answer. They're just saying their story's not over yet. Like, whether or not it ends in sadness or ends in happiness, their part of the story is not over yet. And I don't find that it's ambiguous, like, because we couldn't come up with something. It was more of an ambiguous, either way works.
If I believe it right, I think you think ambiguous is almost like lazy writing. You don't want to find an answer.
Yeah, it's usually something where it's like, okay, that means you want someone else to come up with an answer because you don't have one that you can stand behind. And I think this one leaves it ambiguous, but not to the point where it ruins it, because either answer works.
No, because the ending, even though she walks away from, it's still not like something that it's dreadful, hateful. She probably will talk to him again.
Yeah. And trust me, he missed his plane. He'll be there for a couple more days. He's not done with her.
Yeah. But she has such almost a blind infatuation to Harry that's almost toxic to her, that even she rats him out at the end in the cafe.
That's true,
Yeah. So I still love it. It's it's my 3rd favorite films. Sidebar: the reason I discovered this movie because I work in a video store and we didn't have it on the shelf, and I went back to look for more, put more older movies, and I found this movie, and I was like, why didn't we have this out there? And then a couple weeks later, my art instructor had a T-shirt that said The Third Man. I go, I just discovered this movie. And then a couple weeks later, AFI put out their list, and on the list was one like number 49 was The Third Man. So in a matter of 2 days, I had nothing. I didn't know anything about this movie. In a matter of 2 days, it was bombarded to me.
Oh, well, there you go.
Probably another reason psychologically why I enjoy this movie. So, have you seen The Third Man?
Yeah, currently The Third Man is sitting on IMDb's top 250 films of all time at number 179. Yeah. Does it belong on that list? Let us know down in the comments your thoughts on the film and whether you think it belongs in IMDb's top 250.
I'm going to say it. If you want to know how to write dialogue, this is another movie to check out. This and Not a Pass.
Yes, Nick is saying copy the dialogue down.
Not copy, but know how to.
I'm just kidding.
Know how to, even though some things seem waste away, make sure he has dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, make everything count. Know when to end your scenes. Very, very important.
Which Tarantino won't do.
No. Hey, that's enough now. Yeah. While you're down there commenting your thoughts on the film, please make sure you like and subscribe to the video. We really do appreciate all the support from you viewers, you patrons, you subscribers. It's all fantastic.
Yes, thank you
check
very
on
much.
that Patreon down below to get access to Picks with Kyle and Nick and our Road to the Palma show, as well as getting the option to choose some of the films that we talk about on the show.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of choosing films.
But thank you guys for joining us, and you can find all my film reviews over at goatfilmreviews.com.
You can find my podcast anywhere you find podcasts, and I'm a struggling writer, so you can pay for my drinks too.